Hello, Dental A Team listeners. I am so excited to be here. This is, I think Dana and I, we get our like alone time, our us time, when we come in here to podcast. So and I love that it switched to videos, however long ago that was. I remember in the beginning, I was like, dang it, I can't wear my like comfy leggings anymore. But whatever, here we are. We got to have our hair done, we got to have our makeup done. It's great. But Dana, I love getting the time with you. So thank you so much for being here with me today. How are you on this beautiful Friday in Arizona?
Doing really good. It's a little bit chillier, but I'm
Oh,
learning to find some happiness in that even when I'm freezing outside of softball games.
yes, yes. And you're colder down there than I am up here in Phoenix. But I had a client well, actually, it wasn't, it was Eve, our marketing gal. I don't know if you were on that call, but she was like, I was like, it's cold. Because honestly, in the mornings here in Phoenix, it's like 35 degrees, and that's cold to me. Right. And she's like, you can't complain that it's cold. It's 8 degrees here, whatever it was. And I was like, actually, this has been my whole week. I've been saying this to people. I chose to live somewhere that's supposed to be warm.
Yeah.
So when it's not warm, I get to complain. I don't complain when it's 120 outside and I'm like, I chose this. I wanted warm. So when it's freezing cold and I'm getting freeze warnings on my freaking phone, that's when I'm going to complain. Same with
Um,
Florida right now. I saw it snowing recently on the beaches in Florida. So anyways, thank you. That's our tangent. That's our Arizona girl tangent.
mhm.
Um, we like the heat. That's why we're here. And Dana grew up in the cold. So I feel like if you're saying it's cold, it's freaking cold.
I will say, I always use the excuse that, my body acclimated to the heat.
Yeah.
And so now 32 degrees is, in fact, freezing for
It
me.
is. It is. It is. And my son always says like the Arizona, the desert, like there's just not a lot of insulation in the desert. And so desert nights are freaking cold. They are wild and it drops so quickly. As soon as that sun gets on the other side of the mountain, it's freezing cold. So he's always like, yeah, it's the desert nights. That's fair. I appreciate it when it drops the 30 degrees in the summer to 90 degrees at 8 p.m. I appreciate that, but the 30-degree swing in the winter, a little bit rougher.
Yeah.
So happy Arizona girls, though. I'm excited, Dana, today because I really wanted to chat client wins, client pieces, and I feel like we're always dedicated to systems, and I love that, and we're dedicated to growth, which I think this conversation falls into both of them. But really, you've had some really impressive growth with a lot of your practices, all of your practices, but one in particular we were chatting about earlier this morning that I think would be a really fun conversation for a lot of our doctors because the growth that your doctor has seen within this practice and practices has been really, really fun. And I think what we chatted about earlier, you hit on a lot of different areas that I think a lot of practices are actually in at the same time. I know what you were speaking on. I've had some practices there, and I really want to just pick your brain on some tips and some tricks on that. So, Dana, your practice, I think you mentioned a few things, right? But one of the biggest pieces I wanted to like hear from you, one, obviously like financial wins, how has that grown? Because I know that was a really big space for profit. The profitability of this dentist was fairly low, and you were able to help that increase. But then also this specific dentist has added in a lot of auxiliary procedures that I've seen a lot of doctors going to courses for, Botox and tongue ties, lip ties, all of those different pieces, and separating those out from our GP stuff, which I think also helps the profitability. So the way you guys have done this practice and taken those spaces, always focusing in on the profitability and the growth of the practice, but figuring out how we can create it into like quote unquote departments to increase the value and to increase that profitability is really cool. So slew of questions within that. But take us through, Dana, first steps. Like, how did you figure out where the profitability was lacking, and how did you figure out how to increase that? Because then that led into her being able to add more procedures. I think adding more procedures before we know where the profitability is and before we know where the money is going, adding in those extra procedures can be really, really difficult. So it's already hard enough. And how did you help her figure that out and then slide into being able to add more procedures?
Yeah, this has just been a really fun practice for me too, because it helped to show like when you truly focus on comprehensive dentistry and all the things that you can provide for the patient, not only is it great for your patient, but it massively helps production too. And so
Yeah.
this was a really fun practice to kind of highlight that and to kind of take them through it. And I will say, like, the first part of it really was honing in on their systems and making sure they were most efficient. Block scheduling was huge, and
Mm.
being able to say, okay, this is how you're scheduling now. If we block scheduled everything out and we followed the schedule pretty much to a T, look at the growth that you could have just by
Awesome.
maximizing the things that you currently do. So that was where we started kind of in year one. So year one was really developing systems to make sure that the new patients that we were bringing in, we kept, right?
Yeah.
And the practice actually continued to truly grow in patient number too. So, making sure that we honed in on recare systems, making sure we honed in on reactivation systems. And then it was really cool that once we got systems under our belt, now let's focus on big picture things. And so
Mm.
let's focus on we've maximized kind of one cool thing that we did is we separated out. She does a really heavy load of there's tongue ties and all sorts of adjunct procedures. And
Yeah.
and so we actually separated those things out, and it's actually a business within a business, which then
Awesome.
really helps her see numbers as far as general dentistry and some of her adjunct services that she provides. And so that really helped bring in a lot of clarity because we could start to look at individual numbers separately. We could start to separate new patients. So new patients for this avenue who were more fluid patients. So they would come
Mm.
for those things. And yeah, we worked on a whole lot on converting them over into the general side, but that we could really look at those things independently to hone in on growth for each side. And
Mm.
what's been really fun is as we've separated them out, we've actually even separated out the days. So she now has like, more like tongue tie days and general days, and it helps her team too. And we now are to the point where she actually gets to do more of the things that she loves, which are those adjunct things, and bringing in an associate to help continue to grow the general dentistry side. So it's been really, really fun. But I think the biggest thing is mapping out your schedule to make sure that it works, mapping out your schedule where you can add more of the things. What does that look like? And being able to look at those numbers
Mm.
consistently.
Yeah, I love that perspective and those pieces. And I know there's been a heavy push for the associates and making sure that, the people who are there, the doctors who are already there and the doctors who are coming are really making sure that their schedules are in alignment and that they make sense. And one thing that you said was like a business within a business, and I just love that model. I've done it for a few practices as well, where it's like, this is the thing that we love and we want to do. This is our passion project business. How do we supplement now our practice that's already thriving and doing well with our passion project business? And I think that might be a space that some dentists going to the CE and they're like, I'm passionate about this thing. I think that's sometimes the space that gets overlooked is we've got to have the profitability and the thriving on just our practice. Like we're doing really well. We're getting the new patients, we're getting the pieces because we want that to be supplemental. And yes, you're going to decrease your GP work. So it's going to take some of that load, right? So we're just kind of shifting some of that production and collections every now and again, but it should increase as well because it should be higher value, right? So watching you do this with this specific client and watching you add in those tongue and lip tie for sure, but the oral surgery pieces that they're doing and all of the different modalities, the Botox and fillers, and like there's this practice has a few different avenues that they're working towards supplementing that GP. So it is really cool because, in my opinion, when I've done this with practices, you now have two different pools of patient avatars to pull from for one single practice. And when I think about it from a marketing standpoint, it's super awesome because now we've got two avenues to take this. And I have a dentist that I work with who wants to do a ton of cosmetic practice or cosmetic dentistry right within his practice. And he's definitely gotten to the point where his GP is pretty well foiled over there. And so now what we've done with his marketing dollars is really switch some of that funnel to focus in on consults. So it's a new patient, but we're categorizing it differently, we're tracking it differently. And I think that's likely what you've done with this practice and the doctors who are there at that practice doing all these other pieces is funneling in those consults. Smile makeovers, a lot of practices are doing those because we're looking at new patients on a GP side and 25 to 30 new patients on a full-time doctor on the GP side, standard. That's what we want. But when we're part-time on a GP side, we're looking for, 12 to 15. And then when we're part-time on a oral surgery, a cosmetic, whatever is going on over here side, now we want to see how many consults do we need to get to our case acceptance. So then it's this big spiral when we're adding these new pieces in because now your case acceptance is in play as well. And your consults, especially for bigger procedures, higher value dollars, like longer appointments, just a different set of pieces. Your case acceptance is not going to be the same as your GP. So having a consultant on your side that can help separate those pieces, separate the information, separate the understanding, separate the marketing of it and strategize how to get those to work together feels like a no-brainer because I cannot imagine being on the business owner doctor side where I've just taken all of this CE. I'm super passionate about something. I already have a business I'm trying to work in, and then trying to get home, train my team, get the patients, like trying to do all of that as one human being, the person who's doing it feels really hard. So when you came in, or when this client came in, right? I think if I remember correctly, this specific client already had some of the stuff under their belt, and they already had providers like trying to generate this within the practice. So how did you, as the third party, the consultant looking over the overarching pieces, how were you able to kind of almost slow it down and speed it up at the same time to extract those pieces and allow it to be so fluid?
Yeah. And I really think that it really comes down to we've got to look at these in two different, we've got to make sure that we look at these things as two different things because
Yeah,
a patient that's coming in for general and a patient's coming in for the other side, they're looking for different things. They value different things. Their experience needs to be different. Our systems need to be different. The way we schedule them needs to be different. And when this client first came in, it was like, there were all these providers providing this, but all kind of at the same time, right? So we're running
yeah,
this side at the same time we're running this side, and providers are hopping back and forth. And then, an adjunct provider that was in there to do another specialty service had to hop in. And they were doing well at it, but it felt so stressful for them.
yeah,
And it felt
yeah,
so like we're never going to grow any of the pieces because where we're living right now is so, so stressful and chaotic and a little bit discombobulated, rightfully so. And
yeah,
so when we decided to say, okay, no, let's separate the two, let's look at them very differently, let's build the pieces that work for both places, and let's understand that, like you said, two different patient avatars, two different patient flows, two different patient experiences. And when we actually separated them out, looked at how we could streamline both sides, general and the other side, and we built out the schedule that worked to have them both be there.
yeah.
And I mean, this client even went on to create just even an amazing separate space for these
That's
two.
awesome.
And that does help create all of this. But it really took at like, let's look at both of these take different things, right? They take
Yeah,
different conversations, they take a different amounts of hands-on approach, they take a different way of treatment planning and presenting things and outlining consults differently. And so until we separated them, it was functioning and they were doing
yeah,
okay, but it felt really hard.
yeah. It's chaos.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So figuring out a way to make them both feel easier,
Mm-hmm.
and how we can maximize both ends. I feel like that was where the win was, and really started to paint a much clearer picture of how you can continue to grow both ends to feed each other.
Totally. I think what you did there too, and as you're talking, I'm like envisioning it all, is you really extracted what would simplify it down. And it's just like anything when you go try to do something and there's 15 different things that can be done, picking the right first step is usually the most difficult, right? Picking like, what do I do next that's going to move the needle? And I think my opinion is that's one of the reasons that we hold back from pushing forward with things is we just can't figure out what that next step is. So you were able to make this massive thing two smaller things. And two smaller things is much easier to dissect and figure out than one massive piece. So you kind of separating them made it so that it was easier to look at them as individuals instead of one monster to take care of. And I think as you're talking to, what you did is you were able to not only yourself, but have your dentist or doctor sit in the patient's seat. So it's almost like you got her and the team and everybody, but in that mindset of if I'm coming to you for this procedure, who am I? What kind of a person am I? What are the things that I like? Building out that avatar, but you have to you have to like turn on that brain of that person who's looking for that procedure and then separating that. Because, like you said, a patient who's coming and they're just like, I just need a cleaning, compared to a patient who's like, hey, I've been thinking about this for a while. I need ortho, right? You do whatever smile design. You do. I see you do this. Like that patient's mindset drastically different than the patient who's just coming for a cleaning. So separating those out and creating that space where it is like the consult and you understand you're likely going to need more of the consults over here to get the case acceptance and get the ball rolling than you do maybe even your new patients. Like that ratio is going to be a little bit different, but
Mhm.
you were able to separate that out for them. So I have a ton of doctors. Like we both have so many doctors that are doing so much CE in the last 3 years. Like CE, the last 3 years has been the word of the freaking year. And so many of them get so hyped coming out of their course and their class. But then again, it's that next step. I think sedation has been huge. And implementing sedation can be tough. I think oral surgery procedures in a GP practice has been huge. Our pediatric practices implementing more tongue and lip ties, GP practices going to more cosmetic services, the Botox, the fillers, all of those pieces. And they get there and then they're like, okay, but I have so much going on. I have a full schedule. I have chaos in my schedule already. I have patients that are getting seated late. I have team turnover. And so then they get there, and it's so defeating sometimes to just get to the front door and be like, I'm going to do this. And then it's like, but the chaos I already have is taking my whole schedule. I don't have time for this. And what do you do in those instances where they truly like it's chaotic? It sounds to me like you've answered some of that with like some of the systems, but what are those systems that help reduce that immediate overwhelming chaos where they can see the pockets of time to implement something new?
Yeah. And I think for this practice in particular, their biggest barrier was her having these other things made it really easy for them to, and let me preface this by this particular doctor's goal was to build both areas, right?
Yeah,
Yes, they wanted to do these things, but they still wanted their general dentistry to thrive because we wanted to bring in other associates and we wanted to
yeah,
continue to grow that part. And so where it became a barrier was the team's if there was a hole in the schedule or if there was the team's easy reaction was, oh, we can fill it with a tongue tie, or oh, we can fill it with a
yeah,
Botox and filler, or oh, we can, and that's great in that like production did keep growing, but the vision of the practice then, it was like we were growing one side more heavily than the other, and that wasn't the ultimate goal.
yeah,
And so I think that it is building in the space for those things to where it doesn't feel chaotic. And so
yeah,
if you say, hey, I want to add on Botox and filler, okay, well, let's decide. Let's pick the times when, okay, 4 o'clocks are going to be our Botox and filler consults, and we're building that into that template. If we say, hey, I want to do more all in X's, great. How many more do you want to do? Oh, two of them. Okay, well, let's book out a surgery day, right? Or let's book out a surgery morning. And we have to have the room for it in our schedule to be
yeah,
able to consistently add it in and do the things. And
yeah,
sometimes with bigger procedures, like the key to utilizing them to grow your practice is to do them consistently, not sporadically. Right. And
yeah,
so often we're like, hey, I want to do all in X's or I want to do big surgeries. And it's like, well, I'll add them when I find them. No, you've got
Yeah.
to build the time into the schedule. You've got to build them in consistently, and then you've got to work really hard to find them to fill those spots.
Yeah.
And so it's sometimes just flipping that mindset of this is something I'd love to add. Well, if you want to, how much of it do you want to add, and where can we actually put it in that it's in there consistently and continues to grow?
I love those words of wisdom. I have a few practices that have implemented surgeries and things like that, but I have one practice in particular that I've worked really hard with on becoming mostly an oral surgery GP practice, and that's something that they're currently struggling with is, and it's kind of coming from the doctor of like just plug it in and know what a surgery is more important, get the surgery patient in and move the other patients and narrowing them down to those days is so valuable because then you know how many you need, you know that you can or can't fill it, you know what the GP side, it just clarifies so many pieces. So I love that. I think that's surely step one and implementing anything new is just deciding where is it going to go. I know I have a ton of doctors that will do root canals on Wednesday mornings. Like I only do root canals Wednesday mornings. Like perfect. Do root canals only Wednesday mornings. Like what does that need to look like? And I think what you said there is key. In the beginning, you said you did the block scheduling and got the GP side done, handled. Like, let's get consistent with what we're already doing. Let's learn how to do it with what we're already doing before we add another aspect that just confuses and creates chaos and more change to the team. So if the team can get really good at what you're already doing, it's much simpler to add another aspect in there because it's just layering then on top of what you're doing. Now you're just layering something else. So that's so cool. I'm so impressed with everything you've been able to do with this client and all of your clients, but this one's a fun one for me to watch grow. And I know all of our clients are so valuable to us, and she's in a lot of things with us. So it's just really cool to hear all of these pieces and to watch you be able to pick those pieces out and teach everyone a couple lessons here and there. So thank you for letting me pull that out of you and pick your brain on it today, Dana. You are an incredible consultant, and your clients are so, so lucky to have you. And just keep up the amazing work. I think this is incredible.
Thanks. And I will say a lot of this is just to the like hard work and effort that her and her team put into things to get the results. And so just, shout out to them too.
I agree. I agree. If you're coming to work with us, you're coming to see us, no, we are here for you. We support you and we will hold you accountable to those ding ding fires. And as long as you're willing to put in that work on the other side, because I can't be in the practice for you, but as long as you're willing to put in that work on the other side and you're ready to make those changes, holy cow, it's exponential what we can do with you. So thank you, Dana. That was an awesome shout out. I'm sure they appreciate it as well. You guys go look at what you're already doing. I know everyone out there is looking for something more they can add. More value can they bring to their patients? But look at what you're already doing first. Take Dana's tips today and look at how can we create more systems or create more efficiency in what we're already doing so that we can layer something new on top of it. If you need help, if you have questions, if you're looking to do block scheduling and you need help with that, you've already got CE, like whatever it is, you guys, we're here for it. We want to answer your questions. Hello at thedentaleteam.com is an easy space for that. You can send things in if you're a client already. Reach out to your consultant if you have anything exciting you want us to know or help with. And as always, thank you so much for listening. Drop a 5-star review below. We'd love to hear it. And if you are a soon to be client or just someone who wants an assessment, don't forget we do our free practice assessments with anybody who wants to sign up for them. Our clients have already had them, whether you've had that one specifically or one similar to it with your consultant, but anybody who's not a client yet, please go do it just for fun. Sometimes it's good to know. So thank you, everyone. Dana, thank you. And we'll catch you guys next time.